There's a scan a cardiologist sees more often than you'd expect. It belongs to a man in his 40s who has, by every visible measure, gotten his act together. He fasts. He trains. He threw out the seed oils, quit the soft drinks, and watched 20 pounds disappear over a year. If you lined up his habits on paper, you'd assume his arteries were in pristine condition. Then the imaging comes back, and there it is. Calcium where there shouldn't be any, plaque forming earlier than his age would predict, the inner wall of his arteries showing wear that contradicts everything he's been doing. His protocol was working. It just wasn't working the way he believed it was. Intermittent fasting is, without much argument, one of the better studied metabolic interventions we have. Researchers like Mark Mattson, who spent years studying fasting biology at the National Institute on Aging, have documented how it can lower insulin, calm inflammation, ease blood pressure, and steady blood sugar. The evidence for those benefits is genuinely strong. But here's the part nobody puts on the thumbnail. The same protocol, run with a few small errors baked in, can push in the opposite direction. It can nudge blood pressure higher, irritate the arterial wall, and speed up the very plaque it was meant to hold back. The trouble is that your cardiovascular system is silent about all of this. There's no alert, no symptom, no moment where your body taps you on the shoulder. Plaque builds quietly for 10, 15, 20 years. For a lot of men, the first real signal that something was wrong arrives as the event itself. So if you fast, give me the next several minutes. Tap subscribe before we start, because this channel is built to hand men in this stage of life the kind of science that actually changes how you age, and there's more coming that you'll want. We're going to walk through 5 specific ways fasting flips from protective to corrosive. 5 habits that feel like willpower. 5 habits that, repeated quietly across months and years, can bend your cardiovascular future the wrong way while you feel completely fine. Counting down from 5. Number 5. Hard-fasted cardio first thing in the morning. You know the routine. Alarm goes off, black coffee goes down, shoes go on, and you head out to run hard while still inside your fasting window. It feels sharp. It feels like a head start on everyone still asleep. You tell yourself you're stacking fat-burning tools on top of each other. And if you're 25 with clean vessels and a nervous system that bounces back from anything, you're probably fine. At 45, the math is different. Consider what's actually unfolding in your chest at 6 in the morning. Cortisol is already climbing. That's the normal wake-up surge, the cortisol awakening response, and it's supposed to happen. Now pour coffee on it, which lifts cortisol higher. Add hard exercise, which releases a flood of adrenaline. Do all of it fasted, with blood sugar low and your sympathetic nervous system running at full tilt. You've assembled a small storm of vascular pressure. Blood pressure jumps, heart rate spikes, and if there's any quiet plaque sitting in an artery, the kind plenty of men in their 40s carry without a clue, this is the exact mix of forces that can place sudden mechanical strain on it. There's a documented reason cardiac events cluster in the morning. Decades ago, the cardiologist James Muller and his colleagues showed that heart attacks aren't spread evenly across the day. They peak in the hours after waking. Loading intense fasted effort into that window stacks one stressor on top of another for men who may already be carrying hidden disease. The fix isn't to quit training, it's to match the tool to the moment. Walking, easy cycling, mobility work, all excellent fasted. Save heavy lifting and sprint work for later, when you've eaten and your system has fuel and a buffer behind it. Number 4. Breaking your fast with sugar and refined carbs. 16 hours in, you feel light and clear and a little proud. Then you walk into the kitchen and grab the orange juice, the granola bar, the cereal, the protein shake, hiding 20 grams of added sugar. You figure you earned it. Here's what your body actually goes through. 16 hours of falling insulin has left the lining of your arteries in a quiet, settled state. The endothelium, the single-cell thick layer coating the inside of every vessel you own, is relaxed, inflammation is low, nitric oxide signaling is clean. Then you hit that calm surface with a wave of glucose. The Italian researcher Antonio Ceriello has spent much of his career showing how sharp spikes in blood sugar generate a burst of oxidative stress and temporarily impair the endothelium's ability to dilate and function normally. Insulin surges, glucose climbs, free radicals form, and that delicate tissue takes a hit right after a stretch where it was calm and exposed. One spike isn't a catastrophe, but repeated over years. This pattern is a well-recognized road toward endothelial dysfunction. And endothelial dysfunction is the opening chapter of nearly every story coronary artery disease tells. So treat that first meal like it counts, because metabolically it's the loudest meal of your day. Break the fast on protein, fat, and fiber. Eggs and olive oil, a handful of nuts, leafy greens, avocado, a piece of wild salmon. These barely move glucose. They rebuild you without the shock. If you're going to eat the higher carb foods at all, push them to your second or third meal once your system has settled. Number 3, letting electrolytes slide on longer fasts. This one hides in plain sight because the warning signs are so easy to wave off. You're 18 hours into a fast and your heart does a little flutter. You stand up and feel briefly lightheaded. Your sleep that night feels restless and twitchy. You call it nothing. It's very often electrolytes. When you fast, insulin falls. When insulin falls, your kidneys release sodium. Water leaves with the sodium, and potassium and magnesium tend to go along for the ride. 2 minerals your heart cannot keep a steady rhythm without. Your heart is at bottom an electrical organ. Every beat is set off by ions moving across the membranes of cardiac cells, and potassium and magnesium aren't side characters in that process. They're load-bearing. Run them low and the heart can start misfiring in small ways. Skipped beats, premature contractions, minor rhythm hiccups. For most men, those are harmless. For some, particularly anyone with an underlying conduction quirk, they can be the prelude to something more serious. Low magnesium specifically has been associated in population studies with higher rates of atrial fibrillation and hypertension, and a meaningful share of adults are already running mildly low before they fast a single hour. The fix is almost insultingly simple and skipped constantly. A pinch of sea salt in water during your fasting window won't break the fast and meaningfully eases the strain. Take magnesium glycinate in the evening. Eat potassium-rich foods, leafy greens, avocado, sardines, inside your eating window. Once you're regularly fasting past 16 hours, electrolytes stop being optional. Number 2, stacking fasting on top of chronic stress. This is the one that quietly extracts the steepest price and almost nobody brings it up. Picture it. Work is relentless, you're sleeping 6 hours, sometimes 5, a deadline is sitting on your chest, money and family are pulling at you from both sides, and you decide that this, of all moments, is when you should tighten the screws. So you stretch the window from 16 hours to 18, then 20. You tell yourself, this is strength. Here's the biology underneath. Cortisol is already high from the lost sleep. It's high again from the relentless mental load. And fasting, especially longer fasting, layers another dose of cortisol on top. In short bursts, cortisol is essential. Held high for weeks and months, it's one of the more damaging hormonal states for your arteries. It pushes blood pressure up. It contributes to an environment where LDL particles are more readily oxidized, part of how cholesterol shifts from harmless passenger to arterial plaque. It impairs endothelial function and worsens insulin resistance even while you're fasted. And it compresses your heart rate variability, the beat-to-beat variation that when it shrinks is one of the stronger predictors we have of long-term cardiovascular risk. Stack fasting onto a life already soaked in cortisol, and you're not forging discipline. You're laying down atherosclerosis with extra steps. The fix asks for a kind of humility disciplined men tend to resist. Fasting is a stressor, a good one in the right setting, a harmful one in the wrong one. When life is chaos, shrink the window. Drop to 14 hours. Drop to 12. Sleep more. Get morning light. Bring the stress signal down before you reintroduce the fasting signal. The protocol will wait for you. Quick, honest question before the last one. Of the 4 so far, which are you actually guilty of right now? Drop the number in the comments. 5 for the fasted morning runs, 4 for how you break your fast, 3 for ignoring electrolytes, 2 for stacking fasting on a chaotic life. I read them, and I want to see where most of you land. Number 1, treating fasting as the whole intervention. This is the big one, and nearly every man past 40 does some version of it. Fasting becomes the identity, the window times, the apps, the streaks, and the eating window, which is what actually decides what raw material your cardiovascular system gets to build with, becomes an afterthought. You break the fast on whatever's nearby. You eat fast food, trusting the window to somehow cancel it out. Underneath it all sits a quiet belief that the protocol itself is doing the work. It isn't. Your arteries are built and rebuilt from what you eat, not from what you skip. Cardiovascular 2 is hungry for specific things. Omega-3 fats from oily fish, which quiet inflammation and help stabilize existing plaque. Polyphenols from extra virgin olive oil, the Predadim trial, one of the largest Mediterranean diet studies ever run, tied that exact pattern of eating to fewer cardiovascular events. Flavonoids from berries, dark chocolate, green tea, and leafy greens. Fiber, which feeds the gut bacteria that produce the short-chain fatty acids your vessels rely on. Magnesium and potassium from whole foods. A man who fasts 16 hours and then crams his eating window with processed meat, refined carbs, seed oils, and sweet drinks isn't guarding his heart. He's running a low insulin window and then detonating an inflammatory spike inside it. There's a reasonable case that this pattern can be worse for some men than simply eating in a balanced way across the whole day. Fasting is the frame. Food is the picture inside it. Most men polish the frame and ignore the canvas. Flip the priority. Spend more thought designing your eating window than your fasting window. Anchor every meal on at least one cardioprotective food. Olive oil on nearly everything. Oily fish 2 or 3 times a week. Greens at every meal. Berries with breakfast. Green tea instead of soda. The fasting hours set up the low insulin environment. The eating hours decide whether your heart collects the benefit or pays the bill. Get this one wrong and the other 4 barely matter. Get it right and you've installed one of the most powerful cardiovascular tools available to anyone outside a hospital. None of these 5 feel like mistakes while you're making them. They feel like commitment. They feel like proof you're pushing harder than the men around you, and that's exactly what makes them dangerous. 2 men can run an identical-looking fasting protocol and walk 2 completely different roads. One whose discipline protects his heart for another 30 years. One whose discipline quietly speeds up the disease he was fasting to outrun. The difference was never the window. It was everything wrapped around it. Audit the 5. Be honest about which ones are yours. Fix them. Your heart won't warn you until it's already too late to listen.